What's happening, sweet angels? Trumpeter Bobby Spellman here. And recently I released a new book of trumpet flexibility exercises entitled Progressive Flexercises for Trumpet. You may have seen this book in my last couple of episodes. It contains a series of exercises that I have written to really try to overcome some of the challenges involved in playing the trumpet, especially where it relates to flexibility, range, endurance, and accuracy. Now, in my last video, a gentleman named Marcel asked in the comments if I would do a little tutorial on how to play some of these exercises. So today I thought I'd take a little time to talk about some of the first exercises in the book and how you can go about playing through these exercises. For everyone who has purchased a PDF copy or physical copy of the book so far, thank you very much. I hope you're having a lot of fun with it. It really means a lot to me that you picked up a copy of your own. But if you don't have a copy, these exercises or these principles will also apply to the flexibility exercises that you might find in Flexis or in Scott Belk's flexibilities for brass books and things of that nature. So you may still get something out of it. So come with me today on a little tutorial on how to approach flexibility exercises on trumpet in this exciting episode of Trumpet with Bob. All right, gang, this is going to be a fairly casual tutorial on how to approach some of the exercises in Progressive Flexercises for Trumpet, for those of you who have picked up a copy of the book. And if you have not, stick around, because a lot of the principles that I'm going to talk about today also apply to any kind of flexibility exercise that you might do on the trumpet. Now, my goal here is to give an overview of the way that I approach the exercises in the book and sort of the way I intended these exercises to be practiced. But one of the things that I've learned over many years of teaching many students is that each individual person is coming at the trumpet from a different perspective. So if you are working on some of these principles on trumpet, including flexibility, accuracy, endurance, and range, and you want some one-on-one help with that, you can send me an email at the email address in the description, or find us on our website, and we can meet up via Zoom or in person in the New York City area, and I can help you work out some of these kinds of flexibility exercises if you're looking for private lessons. I've got a little room in my schedule, and sometimes I have openings during the week. So feel free to give me an email if you're trying to work on these things specifically. But to give you a quick overview, what I wanted to do is go through some of the principles that I was going for in this book, and then talk about the beginning exercises and how to practice the exercises in the book. So let's dive in here. A lot of the foundation for these exercises comes from the Carmine-Caruso method, and in particular Flexis. I was fortunate to be able to work with John McNeil and Lori Frink, trying to learn some of the principles of Caruso's method, and much of that applies to these kinds of exercises. So you can keep that in mind if you've worked out of those books. Some of this may sound familiar, but I intentionally wrote these exercises to pinpoint the challenges involved in things like endurance and in range, and the purpose of it being to build the muscles in your face while also figuring out how to coordinate your muscles in your air and things of that nature. So with that in mind as a background, we're going to crack this guy open here. The beginning couple pages is just why I wrote the book and my intent, and I have a page on how to use the book. I have 2 pages on that, so it's written in there, but I figure that this would be a useful overview on that in case you don't like to read, which is just about everybody. All right, so the first thing that I put in the book is what I call preliminary flexercises. And these are very fundamental trumpet exercises. These are similar to what you might see in any kind of flexibility method book, but they really start from the beginning. So I might give the first couple of preliminary flexercises to students who are just starting out. Maybe in the second or third lesson, I might start with some of these, or any students who are coming back to the trumpet after a long time and trying to rebuild their embouchure. So an example of these kinds of preliminary flexercises would be the very first one, in which I'm going to move back and forth from a G flat to a D flat using all 3 buttons. So it's just going to be using my air and my the position of my head, the muscles in my face and my tongue and whatnot, to move those notes around. So that sounds like this. Now, the reason I give this kind of exercise to people who are just starting out or are coming back to the trumpet after a little while is that it gives you the opportunity to train your body how to make the move between partials. Now, that move is tricky in the beginning when you just start off playing the trumpet. Just figuring out how to coordinate your muscles and your air and your tongue and everything to be able to move around the partials is sometimes the trickiest part of starting out on trumpet. Once you get a handle on that, everything else becomes much easier. So I'm starting out with that kind of an exercise. And the way I wrote it is that one measure of music is just to be repeated as many times as you need in order to really feel like you have a handle on being able to move between the partials. From there, it moves up chromatically, moving up to 1 and 3. Etc., going up all 7 fingerings on the trumpet. So there's no real number of times that you need to play each of those measures. It's just as many times as you think you need to in order to really get a handle on what's happening. So as you feel very comfortable with it, these exercises can then become a warm-up rather than a challenging exercise. Many people coming at this book may find the preliminary exercises to be very easy. But if you're just starting out with this kind of an exercise, this is really the place to begin because it's the fundamentals that you'll have to deal with in the rest of the book and in flexibility exercises all over the place. Now, let me give you one example of how I would use this to refine what I'm doing before I move into the next exercises in the book. So, one thing that gives people a hard time, generally speaking, is that they will move their faces more than they have to in order to get these notes to speak. All right, so I'm going to go to one of the other preliminary flexercises in the book, and I'm going to over-exaggerate the motion of my face so that you can see what that might look like. So in this case, I'm not going to use enough of my air, and instead of using my air, I'm going to overcompensate with my face. And it sounds like this. Actually, it looks like this more than anything. Check it out. So if you find that you're moving a lot in order to try to move those notes around the partials, what you're going to find is 2 things. Number one, you're going to get tired quickly. It's going to be very bad for your endurance. Secondly, you're putting your face in these positions where it's hard to be accurate with the notes because you're adding an extra variable to your playing. That is to say, as you're moving around, you're shifting the shape of your embouchure such that it's hard to hit the notes where you need them. For that reason, the very first tip I always give everybody is your first job is to get your air support on point. So you want to make sure that you're blowing a steady airstream and you're really thinking about pushing that air from your gut. I'm always feeling it in my abdominal muscles. You're using your abdominal muscles and your external obliques to push the air out of your lungs so that you can ride that airstream so that you can easily maneuver between the notes. So if I'm using my air correctly, you can notice how much I can reduce the motion in my face. So the thing to keep in mind when doing these exercises is that you always want to make sure that your air is where it wants to be. You want to be using your air support correctly to try to reduce motion in your face as much as possible. Naturally, you're going to move a little bit. Everyone is going to move a little bit, especially in the last chapter of this book. You're slurring over 2 octaves at a time or more. And in doing that, there's going to be some motion in your face. But nonetheless, the goal here is to reduce that motion as much as possible. Is there anything else in particular there? Sure, let me give you one more piece of advice. As I'm doing this, the way that I'm thinking about it is, I'm trying to move everything in here in this way, in this fashion. It's going to sound like this. I'm trying to find the specific place where my tongue needs to be in order to shape the airstream inside my mouth. I want to know that I'm pushing the air from my gut, and I want to make sure that I'm maintaining enough tension in my face in order to get these notes to speak. Furthermore, you want to make sure that you're not using the pressure from the mouthpiece on your face to move these notes around. So once you start to get tired, it's a good idea to stop and take a break, as I've mentioned in previous videos, because the possibility is that you will then start to jam the horn into your face in order to move the notes around the partials. If you're really using excess pressure to move these notes around, you're also going to be getting into bad habits. Another thing that I'll mention just in the preliminary flexercise section is you always want to take any of these exercises as slowly as you need to in order to be accurate. Once you can be accurate, moving them up to speed becomes much easier. But if you start off faster than you're comfortable, faster than you can be accurate, then you're training your body to play incorrectly. Your job is to train your body to play these exercises accurately and correctly, and then you can move them up to whatever speed you want. So there is no speed that is too slow. If you just are patient with yourself and really try to be accurate with it, really try to feel the motion between these partials, before very long you will realize that you can play these things much more quickly. All right, so let's move on to exercise 1. I talked about this in my video on my favorite trumpet exercise of all time. But it looks like this. Now, each of these exercises is written in 4 transpositions. Now, there are 7 fingerings on the trumpet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And each of these exercises goes through all 7 of those fingerings. But I didn't want to write 7 different transpositions on a page because when I did that, it looked really cluttered. So it's much easier to read if I only have 4 exercises per page. Now, for that reason, each iteration of the exercise is going to be played using 2 fingerings, except for the 4th iteration of the exercise, which is only played open. So what you'll notice on the top of the exercise is a symbol, for example, that looks like this. And what that indicates is that the exercise is to be played with the fingering 1, 2, and 3 in G flat major, and then 1 and 3 in G major. Now, if you look at the exercise, for example, I'll put the very first exercise down here. What you'll notice is, if you just imagine a G-flat key signature, then if you put down 1, 2, and 3, all these notes will fit the key of G-flat major. Similarly, if you just imagine in your mind's eye that there's a G key signature, that there's 1 F sharp, then 1 and 3 will naturally fit the exercise. So you go through each one of them twice, first 1, 2, and 3, then 1 and 3, then you move up another half step, it's 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 in A flat major and then A major. Again, the exercise will reflect what notes you're playing, even though I didn't include any key signatures, because again, that would just be unnecessary visual clutter, and I wanted to make everything look as clean and easy to read as possible. So the way that you practice this exercise with that in mind is you start off on 1 fingering. Each exercise is played through using all 7 fingerings if possible, or until you get tired. But you're going to start off with 1, 2, and 3 and play through the first line of the exercise. The goal here is always to keep the mouthpiece on your face throughout the whole first 4 measures. Each exercise is 8 measures long. They're each little melodies that are to be slurred completely. Everything needs to be slurred completely. You don't want to tongue anything because that defeats the purpose of the whole exercise. So I'm going to go through 4 measures with the horn on my face. If I run out of air, I'm going to stop at any time and breathe through my nose. This comes from the Caruso method. The idea here is just that this is sort of a long setting exercise, and you want to make sure that you're able to move around whatever the range is on the exercise without moving the mouthpiece on your face, without changing your embouchure, or without doing any excessive motion. So the point of this is to keep the mouthpiece on your face so that you can play through the full 4 measures of the exercise without moving more than you have to. At the end of that 4 measures, I will then take a breath, because it's usually very useful. I can take a little pause there, and then I will start on the second line with the same principle. The only other thing that I will add to that is the idea that it is important to play these in time. It's not necessary to play them with a metronome at all times unless you find that that's helpful, and then go for it. But the principle is that you're teaching your muscles how to move in time. And in order to do that, you want to make sure that you're playing this at a consistent tempo, whatever that tempo may be. Once again, it can be as slow as you want it to be. It really does not matter, as long as it's in time. So the first exercise with the fingering 1, 2, and 3 will sound like this. So each line is played in time with a little pause in between them. As I first put the mouthpiece on my face, I was kind of fracking some of the notes in there in the first 2 measures, so you could do it again if you want. Slow it down if you need. The goal always being just to focus on the requirements in order to move those notes around, and always using your air support to be able to ride that airstream and make it easier to navigate the various partials on the instrument. All right, so you go through the first 4 bars, take a breath, take a little pause, then move on to the second 4 bars, the second system of each exercise. Now, if you've got enough air and you're just trucking through these, you don't need to take the pause. If you don't need the breath, you could just do the whole 8 bars in one breath. And that might sound like this. Now I'm going to go up to 1 and 3 now, so I'm going to do it in G major so you can hear it in a different key. Now I might choose to go over that again and just smooth out any wrinkles, kind of sand down any challenges I might have had with that exercise. But if you're feeling comfortable with it and you're nailing it, move up then to 2 and 3, and that's going to bring it up a half step to A flat, and that brings us down to the next line of the exercise. So if there's 4 lines of the exercise, I'll show you. Why not? I'll show you what it looks like. See this? Boop. So you have, here's G flat and G major. Down here you've got A flat and A major, and then you got a B flat major and B major, and then finally C major at the end is open. So you can go through the whole thing in all of those transpositions. I'll do it one more time in A flat. It goes like this. Now, it may not be perfect on the first try. You may have to go through it a couple times. You may have practiced these like me for years, 1,000,000 times, and every once in a while you're still gonna, whiff a note here or there. And then it's just about going back and refining that. That's the accuracy part of this, is that you're really training your body how to find each of the individual partials and get them accurately. After you do these kinds of exercises, tonguing these things in order to get them in the right partial becomes much easier. Obviously, having to slur through the entire exercise is difficult. That's why I wrote them like this. It's really an exercise to build up the muscles in your face, while also coordinating your muscles in your air and the timing and your tongue and everything else. That's all very important, as well as your ears, of course. Like, as you're reading through these kinds of exercises, I wrote them melodically on purpose, so that you're coordinating the feel of playing this stuff with what it sounds like in your head. So as you're reading through this stuff, you're getting a sense for the ear training element of it and coordinating that with the physical nature of playing the instrument. All right, so that's my goal with this. That's how every one of these exercises in this book works. As we go through the book, the first chapter is all one partial at a time. So you're moving through one partial at a time. After chapter 1, I've included another preliminary series of preliminary exercises that just talks about moving more than one partial at a time. So in that case, you're using your air to try to move between 2 partials rather than 1 partial at a time. It sounds something like this. And it takes a little practice to get to move over 2 partials at once without necessarily hitting the intermediate partial, without hitting the partial in between. But that's a very important skill. So the more you work on those kinds of things, the easier it gets, the smoother the sound of the transition between the 2 partials. After the second preliminary Flexercise section, we're off to the races. And then the rest of it is just progressively moving into wider intervals and up into the upper register. So chapter 2 just deals with slurring over 2 partials at once. Chapter 3 gets a little bit more aggressive, where you're slurring all over the range of the horn. So it goes, takes you from low G all the way up to high C, moving several partials at once. Chapter 4 is all about range, so it deals with mostly exercises from about D flat in the staff to high G is the highest, double high G. So high G above the G on top of staff. You get the deal. All right, so it deals with just gradually moving up the registers of the instrument to give you some strength and stability. I'll make a whole video on that, don't worry about it. But the principle is that all of these exercises work the exact same way as the very first exercise. So once you get a handle on it, it's just about slurring through each 4-bar segment, which will take you across the range of the instrument and across many partials at once to teach you where you need to be in order to hit each of these notes accurately, while very importantly building up the muscles in your face, which is going to help with range and especially with endurance. Finally, the last chapter is bonkers. It jumps all over the place. I'll give you a quick peek. Looks like that. If you're a trumpet player and you want to sound like Eric Dolphy, that would be a good series of exercises to do. And after you do those kinds of exercises, I think a lot of the music that you're going to have to play is going to seem very easy to do. All right, gang, so there it is. Your first goal is always to use your air efficiently, really feel like you're pushing the air from your gut. Try to use your air support to make it easier to navigate the melodies within the book without having to move your face. This applies to any kind of flexibility exercises. If you're working on the flexibility exercises in Flexus, or you're working out of any number of other flexibility books, having your air under control is the first step because everything else relies on it. After that, your job is to, focus on the subtle motion required to move around the different partials of the instrument. You want to keep the horn on your face throughout each 4 bars of the exercise, but you can breathe in between. And you want to go as slowly as you need to in order to be accurate. As you go through each exercise in the book, they get progressively harder. That's the progressive part. So it starts off very easy, generally speaking. Although if you're just starting out on trumpet or you're coming back to trumpet after years off, those will give you a hard time, and that's what my goal was. They're not, they're not that easy. But you can start off with some fairly, basic flexibility exercises, and then as the book progresses, it gets harder and harder. But if you are diligent about your practice in dealing with the earlier exercises in the book, you will quickly find that the later exercises that may have at one time seemed impossible become not only attainable, but fun and easy. All right, gang. So if you want to check out a copy of the book for yourself, you can find a link in the description below. We have PDF copies and physical copies as well. I'm sending out physical copies, so if you want a physical copy, I will put one in the mail for you. And if you have any questions about this, leave them in the comments or send me an email. If you like this video and you want to keep up to date with what we're doing, you can give it a like and subscribe to the channel. You can also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Ridgewood School of Music. And if you're looking for lessons in trumpet or brass or saxophone, clarinet, flute, whatever it happens to be, or jazz improvisation, you can find us on our website at www.ridgewoodschoolofmusic.com. Or at our email. You can send us an email at ridgewoodschoolofmusic@gmail.com. All right, gang. If you picked up a copy of the book, thanks a lot. It really means a lot. I really hope you're having a lot of fun with this. My goal with this was to write exercises that I would have fun with, so I hope you're having fun as well. All right, gang. Have a lot of fun practicing, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya. Trumpet with Bob.